I always say the difference between selling 0 and 1 is the difference between failure and success.
Uh-huh.
Because my humble opinion is if you can sell 1 off a shelf without people knowing who you are and it's not
Yeah.
your family buying it,
Yeah.
you can sell 1,000,000.
Right.
So, I was on with someone yesterday and she said, "Oh, we only sold whatever." And I said, no, it's not only. Do not say that. You've sold like tens of thousands of dollars. That actually means you are onto something. Doug and I on the weekend, we would hide in stores and literally wait, like we'd pretend we're looking at other areas and we'd be peeking to see if anybody would come to our section. And if they did, we'd like run over and we'd be like, pretend we didn't say we made them. We'd say, "Oh my gosh, we've got these for our children and they're the best. Oh, you've got to get them."
Hello and welcome back to The Unknown Path, the podcast where you hear stories of the unique grit and determination behind the success you see from the outside. The unlikely synchronicities, the coincidences and connections, the untraveled roads forged one step at a time, the trials and tribulations, the hard knocks and the celebrations. This is an authentic sharing of human stories. And today, on The Unknown Path, I am very excited to welcome a new friend of mine, Melissa. Melissa and I got introduced quite recently, actually, and we hit it off straight away. And as soon as I heard some of your story, Melissa, I was like, "Oh, can we please record a conversation and get it on the show?" I think there's some lovely stuff there for people to listen to, and you really kind of fit the avatar of the show. I'm interested in talking to people who've worked hard and created what looks like from the outside tremendous success, but that's always, from the outside, people only see the surface level. And what I'm really interested in is some of the stories that sit behind that. So, folks, I have with me today Melissa Bernstein. Melissa and her husband Doug created Melissa and Doug Toys. That was their labor of love for more than 30 years. And then also in recent years have created a second company, Lifelines, which we'll find out all about. Melissa, welcome to the show.
I am so excited for this conversation. It's such a joy whenever we speak. It's the best conversations.
Yeah, yeah. And for the folks watching the YouTube and not just listening to the audio, it's a real background. And we were just discussing before we started recording that we both share a love for the ocean people, and being by the sea is healthy and important and all that sort of stuff. Without giving away too much, which part of the world are you in, Melissa?
We are in the northeastern part of the United States.
Beautiful. And so winter for you at currently January 2026.
It's so cold. I don't know if you can see the ground, but that's snow.
Oh, is that snow?
Yes.
Oh,
The
I didn't
the
realize that.
white is snow, and
Oh,
today it says it feels like 4 degrees. There's a wind chill and it is cold,
wow.
but
Okay.
beautiful, like exhilarating, crisp. Like
Yeah.
if I open this, it is like woo, gives you like a jolt. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
well, we get some proper winters down here in Bells Beach, Victoria, Australia, but we don't get snow. We do when we're surfing in winter here. We've got thick wetsuits on, but we don't get snow quite. We get snow up on the mountains. Oh, that's beautiful. That's really lovely.
yeah.
So before we go and explore the unknown path, or what was an unknown path until you trod it, obviously, can you just give folks a bit of a lay of the land of the current day for you and Doug? What's happening in your lives at the moment?
Sure. It's been an incredibly eventful last few years because, we started our baby when we were 22 and 24 years old and actually just dating. We were not an official couple. So it was scandalous to at least my family that we would do such a thing when we didn't have a formal agreement between each other. But we just officially 2 years ago sold our company fully, and thank goodness we had already the beginnings of another company called Lifelines. And that's really what has been, I'd say, taking all our attention 24/7. It is so hard starting and building a company. And I think similar to childbirth, you forget after, because you sort of get caught up in the joy of it all and you forget the pain of it. But it was it has been nothing short of the most challenging thing we've ever done trying to build this new company. And it has really been consuming us and joyful in many senses, but also many times we've looked at each other. I should say Doug has looked at me and said, "What the heck were you thinking? Like, why are we doing this?" And unfortunately, a few times I've had to agree with him.
Was it your idea to start Lifelines?
Well, it was born out of like an authentic mission that I developed on my journey. And it wasn't really meant to ever be a second company
Yeah.
because, Doug and I have an entire list, and I keep it of never say nevers.
Uh-huh.
And because there are so many in life, things you say, this will never happen, we will never do this. And almost everything I've ever said never to has ended up happening. So one of maybe the number one never was we will never start another company
Right.
because the journey building Melissa and Doug was so challenging and so grueling and so horrific at so many points that we were like, we will never do that. That
Yeah.
chapter is over. No new companies. We are going to, do other things, but
Yeah.
nothing related to building a company. So the fact that we're doing it again, yes, it was predicated on my idea, but he wholeheartedly like we couldn't have done it without him because he builds the whole infrastructure around the ideas.
Yeah.
So it definitely has taken both of us in every ounce of energy we have to get it off the ground.
Specifically, what parts of building the company are the grueling bits? What are the bits where you're like, "Ah," you know?
There is no part of it that isn't grueling. I mean, I, just wrote a book on entrepreneurship and I mentor entrepreneurs. And honestly, I mean, it's sort of well, some days it's two steps forward, one step back. Other days it's two step backwards,
Right.
two steps backwards and like nothing forwards. I mean, every single part of it is hard other than the stuff that goes on in your imagination, right? When I'm ideating, it's pure white space and there's nothing in the way of what I see in my head.
Uh-huh.
But, bringing those ideas to reality always is fraught with issues. There are issues around getting things made, around costing, around hiring people, around issues with retailers. I mean, it's a big challenge, which is why when you do succeed, it's nothing short of like almost miracle proportions.
Wow. Wow. I'm just
Yeah,
so many
it's a
questions.
sacred process that involves going through the fire many, many times and getting so scorched that sometimes you don't even recognize yourself in the mirror. But if you do have the courage to keep fighting through the flames, one day you will, sort of rise up and say, "Wow, we actually built something." And it feels like it's held together by a shoestring, but it's something. And we're still standing when everyone we started with is gone.
Yeah, wow. Wow. I love to hear you describe it like something that's sacred. It's making me think of a rite of passage almost in some way, with creating a business as the analogy for that. So before we start to explore some of that, just Lifelines, what can you just tell us a little bit about Lifelines?
Sure. I have been so fortunate to have two sort of transcendent missions. I call it Bite Me because I believe like missions, like ideas, um, you don't go out to find them other than opening yourself up to life experience. But if you open yourself up, they find you.
Uh-huh.
And, the first one was the magic and power of open-ended play to spark imagination in children and allow them to potentialize. And then the second, which is Lifelines, was this idea that opening our senses up to delightful stimuli can actually interrupt our stress response and activate calm and joy.
Uh-huh.
And as someone who's struggled with her head and getting caught in overthinking and rumination and fear about the future and anger about the past. I was always looking for ways to untether from that.
Mhm.
And the traditional methods were ineffective, completely ineffective, and actually made me frustrated and angrier with myself for my inability to meditate and to do yoga and to be one of those like people who could just sort of chill.
Yeah.
Um, so when I just by accident was having a particularly challenging day and sort of didn't even realize the beauty of nature that was around me. And at some point, this kind of spring breeze blew. It was a spring day then. And instinctively, I just went like, oh, and I lifted my head up to the sunshine and the breeze and the birds singing. And in that moment, I just went like, oh, this
Ah,
audible, loud sigh.
yeah.
And in that moment, I realized I had completely untethered from all thought. And it had been instant, effortless, and completely enjoyable. And sort of that was the beginning of Lifelines because all innovation, all transformation starts with a question and
Yeah.
sort of this curiosity. And I was like, wait a second, if I have been struggling so hard my entire life to interrupt that stress response, I've been forcing myself to try to do it and it's not working.
Yeah.
And in this case, I literally just did the opposite. I just like relaxed and let sort of the sensory beauty of nature like infuse my senses.
Yeah.
And in an instant, I was like, I didn't even know what I had been thinking about. So, what is going on here? And if it's really that easy, and if we all have senses,
Yeah.
why aren't we all using this? And that was the first question
Yeah.
that led to the premise at Lifelines.
Wow. And then developing products for that can help people experience what you experienced in that moment.
Exactly. It was like, if this is really the portal to well-being, first I have to understand my senses. Like why is it that senses are this pathway to calm? And it is entirely physiological. I started to study the science of it and talk with scientists, and it's all about your autonomic nervous system and the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and it's literally scientific that your senses, sensory neurons, your sensory stimuli comes in, and it's only through your senses that you can interrupt the stress response and get into a state of calm and joy. So without it, you can't switch off the fight or flight and enter that other state. So it was pretty profound. And of course, I wasn't planning on creating products. My first goal was to find products that existed for my own well-being practice.
Yeah.
And in that act of buying other products and looking for the products that I was thinking would be really amazing for me, I either couldn't find them or the products I purchased were so flawed. Like it wasn't just a little thing, it was really bad. And of course, unfortunately, my mind starts to say, well, why is it like this? Why can't it be like that? And that's
Right.
the gap. That's all innovation comes from. Why can't I create this from this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more I started to do that, the more I was like, no, 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 not going there. No more products, no company, not doing this. Been there, done that. And I tried really hard for months to just say, it's okay. They don't exist. It's fine. What you're seeing could be
Yeah.
great. It's fine. But
Yeah.
like every day, the more I tried to quell it
Yeah.
squelch it, the more it was like new ideas and suddenly 30 linear feet. And finally, I was like, I don't know if I can live the rest of my days without bringing these products to life. Because
Yeah.
for me, they are like unborn children, these ideas, and they want to have a heartbeat and they want to have breath and they want to be able to touch people and impact their lives. And when they die in me, which happens every day with so many ideas, it's a very depressing process because again, these ideas, like I am the only conduit to giving them life. So if I choose to not give them life, they die. So
Yeah.
like there were so many of them and I was getting like very anxious about are these ideas just going to die with me and like I'll never bring them to life? So finally, I sort of went to Doug kind of tentatively and I said,
Yeah.
like, I have this like premise and I think it's pretty good. I've vetted it sort of and not that I know, but I really want to do this. And of course, he has always been the most supportive. Um, but I think I was a little too, the ideas always lead the way for me. And I think I was maybe a little too impulsive in just saying, let's do this. Because, it's been very hard and we're not in our 20s anymore. And it's harder, 35 years later to do what needs to be done to build a startup.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm guessing, I mean, I don't know. Have you always been a creative, and not only a creative in terms of having ideas, but a creative that feels this compulsion to birth those ideas? I mean, the way you spoke about an idea, and if you don't manifest it into some form of reality, that it dies inside of you, and that's sad, and you feel emotionally about those ideas that come to you. Have you always been like that since you're a little girl?
Well, interestingly, for the first 20 years of my life, I was highly existentially depressed. I was in a very, very dark state because of that very thing. Because from the time I can remember, I always like saw things in my head, right? Like long verses, fully written compositions with music. But the problem was they were very, very dark. And, I had all these questions about meaning, like, why am I here? What is the meaning of life if we die? From really young, like age 2, 3. Uh, and no one seemed to care or want to accept that I was like a really dark person. And I think part of it was I had all this psychic entropy, all this chaos inside me and with nowhere to go, with nothing to channel into other than more darkness, right? It was channeling. I was writing but the problem was what I created was so dark that if I ever showed it to anyone, they looked at me like I was crazy. And they were like, this, you shouldn't be writing things like this. You're a child. You should be going out and playing and having fun. So I got the message early on that the things that came out of me were not good and I couldn't share them. So I think in that state where I created, but it died in me or just led to more unsettled darkness and had nowhere to go, because of that, it didn't have any meaning. And because of not having meaning, I was in a true acute meaning crisis, trying to sort of be externally what I needed to be, but actually being a creative that was unable to touch or serve anyone through it. So I think it wasn't until I had this profound realization when we started to make toys. It wasn't until my, 20s that I saw that actually my creativity wasn't just dark. I had thought, if you had asked me, which I never would have shared, I would have told people I'm just dark. I'm black. Like I'm dark inside. I can't create anything that's just like joyful. Um, and when we started our toy company, just kind of karmically, hadn't ever designed anything that was a product really, other than verses and music and art, but like not stuff that like a light, bright product. But when I started to see toy ideas in my head, um, I was like, wait a second, I'm seeing something that's not dark. It was and it was just, it started like a little tiny spark. It was like, wait, I'm seeing something that's light and bright and has the capacity to impact children and bring some joy into their life. And that was the first time ever that I thought maybe there is a blessing to my curse, because I thought I was truly cursed. I was like, all you do is see these stupid ideas in your head. They're so dark. You can't get them out. You can't rip them out. You can't get any space. Like you're just cursed, basically. But then I started to see this again, this existential philosophy, which is we have a choice in how we choose to use whatever we have, and that I actually had a choice. I could turn off the dark faucet, turn on the light faucet, and channel that very same psychic entropy into light, bright toys. And that was really the first time that I could breathe for my entire life. It was like someone had sort of jammed a breathing tube into my trachea and said, like, this is what it means to breathe fresh air. Because finally, it was like, oh, maybe there is a reason I'm here. And maybe there is some purpose to this, anguish that sort of reigns supreme in me. So I would say that has become my meaning, and that psychic entropy, unfortunately, still exists in its very same form. So and I'm not one that can just create for fun. Like some people, maybe they get joy out of like creating art that just sits on a shelf. Not I. Like I get zero out of it if I don't know it's going to touch someone in some way. So I have to keep doing that. And I think if I don't, very quickly, it's like in a day, I feel it. It's coming, it comes back.
Yeah, wow. I wonder if, I mean, you mentioned earlier that when you and Doug decided to start a company together and you were just dating, that was like, what are you doing? You can't start something official like a company together. You're just dating. You're not even married yet. It was almost like having a child before wedlock.
Oh, it definitely. Well, Doug jokes. We have this funny thing where he gets on his knee and he says, "Will you start a company with me?"
Right. Right. So that tells us a little something about the environment, your family environment that you grew up in. I'm wondering if that little creative girl, with with this compulsion towards creativity and being very introspective, but also creative and thinking and needing to express herself. I wonder if in a different environment she might not have thought she was only dark or that only black. If she was maybe in a different environment where it was celebrated, the dark and the light were celebrated creatively. I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking back to um, I don't know if I'm as compulsive as you in terms of my creativity, but I've always been creative and writing poetry and writing songs and writing things down and drawing and ever since I can remember as well. And I look back to some of my journals when I was in my teens and my 20s, and I'm like, oh, Jem, you were really dark. Like I read the poetry and stuff, I was like, whoa, that's really heavy, dark stuff for a kid. But I never felt the way you're describing it. I didn't feel like I was only black and only dark and couldn't be any light or joy. And I mean, I don't know. There's nurture and nature, but what do you think? Do you think that it had anything to do with the environment, or was that just you, regardless of where you would have been as a little person?
It's an amazing question. I think it was part of the environment, and mostly because the other sort of negative part of me is I didn't want to be creative. Believe it or not, I wanted to be popular and normal and not have like these things in my head 24/7 that I couldn't get out of my head. It was like a ticker tape, literally. It's, running across my brain. And I just wanted to be like a normal kid. So I think one, I despised myself, which is probably why, because I wanted to be like cool and popular and affable. And I think these thoughts constantly made me like weird, I wasn't like your normal kid, unfortunately. And, I think in my family, I felt this need that I had to engage in what I call the three Ps. Basically, I became a perfectionist because there were some dynamics in my family that made it so like uh I didn't want to get anyone angry at me. So like I started to be perfect, which the only way I could do that was through my external achievements. So I started to put a lot of pressure on like, well, how I did in school and my achievements. Um, and then pleasing became really important because that was part of the perfectionism. Like, can I be a good girl? and not get anyone upset with me because I don't want to get anyone angry. And anger was like in my, house. And it was like, I don't want that. And then the whole idea that we don't show how we feel, right? If we're feeling any way that isn't shiny, we hide it. So the third P is performance. So this idea that I will never show anyone what I'm feeling, and I will just give the shiny smile and get angry. Even if anyone says, "Is anything wrong?" You'd be like, "Wrong? What's no? Is something wrong with you? Why would you say something's wrong with me?" That was sort of my mode. Like, don't go there. I'm fine. And I think that was how I grew up, perfectionism, pleasing, and highly performance driven, in both how I performed, but also how I showed, I was. So I think because of that, the creativity still was like in me and I still created obsessively, but it wasn't for joy. It was literally like a necessary way to just kind of survive, even though it wasn't bringing me any of the meaning that I wanted.
Yeah, wow. Hey, if you could go back to 6-year-old or 7-year-old Melissa, if you could go back to her and share something with her about her future life that she doesn't know yet, something that would surprise her and maybe even just quietly, internally bring some joy or some
Yeah.
delight to her, what would you share with her?
Oh, it's a great question. I think all I ever asked is why? Like, what am I meant to do here during my brief time? And I would ask that question every day. And I kind of knew that there was something, like, I knew that I had a purpose, but I couldn't figure it out. So I would have simply said, don't worry. Like, keep on your path. You will find meaning. And it's going to be through this creative force in you that you still don't know how it's going to, what it's going to, channel into. But I promise it's going to channel into something really amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think
And
that would have been if I had heard that, I think it might have, comforted me quite a bit.
yep, yeah. To the 7-year-old, "You're gonna start a toy company," and she would've said, "Oh, don't be so silly. I'm not starting a toy company." That's amazing.
Oh,
And the
I
toy
definitely
company
would have
also
said
would
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
30
well,
companies.
and like many of these things, I never took a design course. I never once did anything related to product design or anything related to product. Like that was
Right.
just like that was, you know, superficial and superfluous. Like in my day, still, you
Yeah.
had a career. Like you wouldn't say, "I'm going to make toys." I mean,
No.
it would have been laughable in the milieu that I was existing in.
Yeah. And, and these days, not just these days, but for many years, people go and study design and study product design and study
Exactly.
all that sort of stuff, but they're doing it because they think it might be whatever, insert here, whatever they think it might be, but they're kind of going, "Oh, if I study this, I might then get that kind of," whereas for you, it was more organic and just showing up. And can you remember the first inkling or the first idea that when you and Doug had where you went, "Hey, let's make something, let's make a product or something." What was that
Well,
like?
everything was that. I mean, we made 10,000 products. So I think every single thing was a product. But I think the first one where we, started to gain traction was when we were sort of driving around one day. We loved to drive because it was sort of this time that we could, see nice parts of, we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And like, gas in those days was relatively inexpensive. So we could like pay for a couple gallons of gas and go for these long drives where we could imagine, we could go by beautiful homes and farms. And it was just like our imagination at work. And we were talking about some of our favorite toys as children. And it was sort of the first time we said, um, what happened to all those classic toys? And like, do they still exist? And then we were sharing that we both loved this book called Pat the Cat and Pat the Bunny. It was like a book that had different textures.
Yeah.
And somehow we said, what if there were a puzzle that had different textures on it? we sort of combined the idea of classic categories that didn't have pizzazz and this book we loved. And that was like that was our first toy product that did relatively well enough to show us the potential in this category.
Right.
And so I think that was how it always was. It was this like, what if? And then, Doug and I are rabid researchers. Like, I think one of the equal qualities in us that I love and is very conducive to entrepreneurship is we don't think we're smart. Like we think we're really hardworking and we think we'll find the answer. And we don't get too caught up in we think we're sure this is going to be right. If we have a presumption, we go and we research it like crazy. And in this case, we were like, are these categories dull, boring, and lackluster? Like, do people care about wooden toys, the ones that we had? Is there this concept of putting texture on a puzzle? Could that work? And we started to go to, there wasn't the internet in those days. It was the 1980s. We started to visit toy stores and ask them, the owners. They'd be like, "Hi, we're a young, as you see, we're 22 and 24, and like we have this weird question. Do you have like wooden toys here, and do you have puzzles, and can we see them? And do you think people would buy them?" So it was just, it was that type of thing, like not knowing anything, certainly not knowing about the categories, but just operating with beginner's mind and really this openness to finding our way.
Yeah. And so when you had the idea for the textured puzzle and you did your research and you thought, hey, there might be a demand for this, like people might want this. How did you go from idea to actually making a textured puzzle? You had very limited resource. You didn't have much money. It was just
Exactly.
just the two of you. How did you go and get it made or start producing it?
So the thing I love to share is honestly, we did it in the most rudimentary way possible. And the reason we succeeded and the reason anybody who succeeds in entrepreneurship does is because they know nothing about what they're doing. So I repeat, if you know about what you're doing, you fail
Right.
because you do it the same way everyone else has done it and you create a very similar concept to what others are doing. So because we had no idea and we had to find our way and we had to do it less expensive because we had no money. I mean, we were literally living at home and we were eating like barely, if our parents fed us great, but if not, it was like we were barely eating anything to afford to make these things. So we were like, okay, we want to do a farm theme. Neither of us is an artist. I'm creative, but I am not artistic, sadly. So we went to the library and we said, let's find the best artist of like farm things we can. And we found this woman, Julie Durrell. We loved her books. And we literally ended up we contacted her and she did our first two puzzles.
Oh,
We got
wow.
her like agent, and I think it was $200 to do like the artwork we did two puzzles.
Yeah.
And so she did our first two puzzles. Then we went to um the fabric district in New York City and like got these little swatches of, for the sheep, it was like a naughty plush, and for the cow, and we picked those. And then we went to a local wood crafter and we said, can you hand jig us like a prototype of this? So we ended up, for it probably cost about $1,000 with everything added up.
Yeah.
We made like two prototypes of our first two puzzles. And
Wow.
once you have a prototype, then you can go out to factories because you have exactly what you're making and sort of they know exactly what you want.
Yeah. Do you remember when the first one sold in a retail shop or the first batch and when
Oh
you
my
first started getting
gosh.
sales?
I mean, it's so well, I know it. I feel it every day because of Lifelines, because we're doing it again.
Right.
And, I always say the difference between selling 0 and 1 is the difference between failure and success.
Uh-huh.
Because my humble opinion is if you can sell 1 off a shelf without people knowing who you are and it's not
Yeah.
your family buying it,
Yeah.
you can sell 1,000,000.
Right.
So, I was on with someone yesterday and she said, "Oh, we only sold whatever." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. It's not only. Do not say that.
Yeah.
You've sold like tens of thousands of dollars. that actually means you are onto something. You could sell $10 million now by, doing more of what you're doing and leaning into the things that are working. So, yes, I mean, every single one of those sales, Doug and I on the weekend, we would hide in stores and literally wait. Like we'd pretend we're looking at other areas and we'd be peeking to see if anybody would come to our section. And if they did, we'd like run over and we'd be like, pretend we didn't say we made them. We'd
Yeah.
say, "Oh my gosh, we've got these for our children and they're the best. Oh, you gotta get them."
So you were your own live
Oh,
sales team,
we
but
didn't stop
testimonial.
at anything. Yes, it
Oh,
was really a labor of love.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And
and
those little moments of joy. But and when you and I first connected and we were chatting, you mentioned again that it was hard, and it wasn't
so
easy.
hard. I can't
And what
say it enough.
parts, like what got you through those bits when you were really in some of the hardest moments? It
Mm.
seems like chapters were hard. In those hardest moments, what got you through, Melissa?
It's a great question. Only having Doug, each other, we would have never. One of my core pieces of advice is you need people around you, both emotional and cognitive support. And without that, you'll never make it. If you're a solopreneur, you will need like a framework, a scaffolding around you, or you'll never make it. And I think there were times that Doug and I would huddle in bed under the covers, terrified because we had a quality issue. I mean, we made children's toys, no less. That is the scariest of every category to be in, because when you're selling millions and millions of toys a year, you know, anything can happen, right? Even misuse of a toy, but someone can get hurt easily
Yeah,
when you have that many products out there. So it is a very terrifying category to be in, to be honest. And we had so many issues that were going on, and times that we said, I don't know if we're going to make it through this one. um, but I think, we always wanted to build a legacy brand. Like we never thought about it as a shortcut to something. And I think the more we started facing these things head on, Doug is much better than I am. He would just deal with it. He would get to the bottom of it. It would be like painful. And we have a couple of them going right on right now with Lifelines that are just like daggers in my soul. It's like, are you kidding me?
yeah,
Not that quality issue. Like, why? What did we, do
yeah,
wrong? And it's always something we did wrong, like, or didn't know enough to do right.
yeah,
Uh, but, the more you face them head on, you deal with the customer complaints, you fix the issue, and you get past it, the more you start to see that that's the key. The key is facing issues head on, and then you realize, oh darn, it's not going to be that there aren't any new issues. It's going to be a new issue, a bunch of new issues every single year.
yeah,
But if we face them all head on and learn from them and at least try not to make the same mistake, the exact mistake again, we will we will get bigger and better and grow and learn from it. So I think we started to get a little more confidence that any one issue alone wasn't necessarily going to, although we thought it wasn't necessarily going to be our undoing. And quite the contrary, if we could say, okay, we screwed up again. How are we going to fix this? What are we going to change so that this doesn't happen? So we had a quality issue with Lifelines, and we completely changed our QC, our quality control process that was flawed. We neglected to do something very important that led to a pretty major quality issue. Nothing safety wise, but just a customer experience issue. So we completely changed.
yeah,
And now the only thing that makes me feel okay about it, not great, but is that that will never happen again.
yeah,
And it would have happened if it didn't happen then, it would have happened another time because we were missing something that we really needed. So I think if you have the courage to look at your mistakes, it sounds cliched, but the truth is the mistakes have all the learnings you need. Like literally, they are telling you what you did wrong.
yeah,
And if you can learn from them and fix the changes, as painful as it is, and apologize to the people. And, I was at the beginning with this quality issue with Lifelines, I was trying to make excuses. I could tell. I was like thinking, and then finally I said, you know what? I'm going to write a letter that we're going to send to every customer who had an issue. And it starts with, I am so sorry. We had this issue. We didn't realize something. It was all done in good. Like, we didn't think we were
Yeah.
going to have an issue.
Mm.
And we are going to send you a whole new set of markers. It's with our markers. And we're so sorry. And, we fixed it for the next batch. So it's actually going to be fine. But we're so sorry you had to experience this. And we appreciate your patience and loyalty. And it's amazing when you send that to people, they complain. And then you say, yes, you are absolutely right. We screwed up. And here is what we're going to do. They're like, oh, wow. I love
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
Customers for life.
amazing.
Yeah.
You actually sometimes you create an even more loyal customer
I think more than
because
sometimes. I think that would be the default. I think that they would be more likely. Melissa, I'm hearing some wonderful things in here. One is without mistakes, you don't learn. So we learn from our mistakes. Own your mistakes. Hand up. We made a mistake and we're sorry. Our intentions were good. We made a mistake. We're fixing it. And also something you said just a little bit earlier on was the recognition that there will always be problems to solve, and I heard it said once that the suffering, the angst that we feel in another problem coming is in the thinking that there shouldn't be problems. Why can't
exactly.
life just be easy? Why can there just why do there always have to be problems? And if you're thinking like that, then when a problem comes, you're going to be doing the suffering over it, right? And it was a conversation that I heard from a meditation teacher that I follow, and one of his friends pointed out to him and said to him, "Hey, once you accept that life is a series of problems to solve, you're going to be much better off than you are right now." And he went, "That's true." And I thought about that. It's so true. I mean, you think you're leaving the house one day and it's just started to rain and you need to get to the car and the car's not under cover and you've got a problem to solve. How am I going to get to the car and stay dry? Oh, I've got to get an umbrella. I haven't got my umbrella. Where's my umbrella? Another problem to solve, right? So life is this series of problems, little problems to solve. And then I was thinking, when you play, the bigger a game that you play. So you guys started by making these beautiful little puzzles and and it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the problems get bigger and bigger, and the levity of them, the mistakes that you make impact more people because you're selling tens of thousands of millions of items, pieces. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it was obviously gradual over 30 plus years of building this company that got really big. Didn't Melissa and Doug Toys become quite massive?
It did. Yes. And by the way, on that issue front, we actually changed what we said. We used to say, will we have problems this year? And we changed it from, what will our problems be this year?
Uh-huh.
So we definitely, just like you said, we realized that there will be problems every year. And it's just a matter of what form they will take.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with that. And it definitely, I mean, if you're going to be in business, you will have continual problems to solve. So, but yes, we did grow very big, really big. We had like well over 1,000 employees and big company problems as you grow.
Yeah. And so not only did you not know about creating products when you were 22 and you just started on this journey together, but I'm guessing, I mean, no one had taught you or given you a handbook on how to have 1,000 employees and manage culture and people and everything that comes with that, which is a whole other thing as well. And what was the journey in learning, how to employ 1,000 people? What was that like?
I mean, nothing short of, I say exhilifying, exhilarating, and terrifying. And I
Right.
would say that was, Doug's journey even more than mine, but so challenging in so many areas. And we definitely didn't do it perfectly. And, I think as we grew, both Doug and I started liking our jobs a lot less. The bigger we got, the things that we really loved doing started getting further and further away. And we were focused much more on the things that, that the corporate things that are not nearly as much fun to do. And Doug's role became, oh my gosh, talk about problems to solve. His job was because he headed HR and he headed quality and safety and he headed supply chain and finance, and all his areas were just awful. Like, it was very rare that if it was going well, you heard nothing. So there was nothing to do, but it was
Yeah.
going badly. That's all you heard. So it was like
Yeah.
everything was negative, basically,
Yeah.
or nothing, right? Nothing or negative.
Yeah.
So I would say his job got harder and harder. And then, for me, what started to happen is uh, I realized, and I think it's something I share quite often with my entrepreneurs. I mentor so many, is I started to realize that I wasn't focusing on what I call my passions, the
Mm.
the intersection of my passions and my talents. Doug and I were co-CEO for over 20 years. And although it was kind of cool at the beginning when it was like you were involved in everything, as we started growing, I realized that I actually despise like leadership in the traditional sense.
Mm.
I don't like managing people. I don't like reviewing people. I don't like personnel issues. I really don't like supply chain and all the issues. All I want to do is take what's in here
Yeah.
and bring it out into the world and espouse the mission in an amazing way and light our salespeople up with how to sell our products really well, because I tell them how extraordinary they are for people.
Yeah.
So, what if I could focus on the things that are actually things I'm the best at and I enjoy the most
Yeah.
versus the things that I'm like not great at and don't enjoy,
Yeah.
isn't that going to be better for our company? So after about 20 years, I actually ceded the role of CEO, which was, interesting. And I think for those in our egos, there's a little bit of like, wow. And I just became whatever you want to call it, chief creative officer. I don't care about titles anyway, but that's not really some huge title. Um, and I got rid of all the things I didn't want to do because I realized, and Doug never really had a lot of chance to do that. He started to hire people to do his things, but ideally he would have done the same thing,
Yeah.
because now he was sole CEO. So if anything, his job became even harder. But he had so many things that he has certain things that he's like so gifted at and he's
Yeah.
amazing at.
Yeah.
And most of the things he was doing were not those things.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. It's the same in any role, if you get to play to your strengths, which is the stuff that you enjoy is quite often the stuff you're good at. And if you get to play to those on a regular basis, you're going to be much, much happier. So are you doing it differently this time round, or are you back in the
Oh yeah,
CEO
from the
role?
very beginning, I
Great.
said, "Doug, you're CEO. I
Yeah.
am all I want to do is create products and espouse the mission."
Yeah.
So 100%. Like I
Yeah.
practice what I preach
Yeah.
and and it's so wonderful. Like I
Yeah.
can now he's not having as much fun again because he ended up in that problem to solve role, which he's extraordinary at. But I think when it's problem after problem after
Yeah.
problem, and there's not a lot of the
Yeah.
other stuff, it becomes a tough job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But my role is like the best role ever. It's like all light and bright and white space. And I love what I'm doing more than anything I've ever done.
Yeah. And along this whole journey as well, not the whole journey, but as adults through your adult chapters, you guys also made a family, right? You got kids.
We did. We can see things, whether they're products or children.
Yeah. How many kids
Yes.
did you conceive?
6.
6 kids.
Yes, 6 kids. So yes,
Oh,
that's
gee
also
whiz.
a little journey along the way.
Talk to me about
And
that, Melissa.
I
I mean, I have the utmost admiration slash respect slash honor slash I mean I could not honor mums any more than I do, and dads, but mums especially, because well, I'm not even going to go into it. All the reasons are there. I'm blown away by mums and how you do what you do. And, some mums have a kid or two, and then there's mums that have six and build a global company.
Yeah.
What?
Well, again, similar to, the other part we were talking about is it's not easy. It's not like an Instagram photo. And I would say, as hard as starting a business was, I think parenting is even harder.
Yeah.
So I don't purport to give people advice on it. It's been quite a journey, but one that I would never, never not do. I
Yeah.
think it's the hardest and the most joyful times of my life, right?
Yeah.
When you have kids. So
Mm.
I think it's the question I'm asked most. I would say that the two questions I'm asked most are, how do you ever work with your husband? That's number one.
Yeah.
And two is this elusive myth of balance, right? How can you do both? And I think one of the interesting things, as adult as I was and as depressed as I was for decades, I always wanted to both have something of my own, like really big of my own, and to be a mom. And I knew that I had to have both. Again, even though, I was kind of raised in the era where, not that many women were like high powered working women. Some of them worked a little, but it wasn't like a woman has this big career.
Mm,
So it was just starting, maybe.
mm,
So I knew I wanted both. And I think because of that, I knew I had to figure out a way for both to work, and that was my problem to solve, but I wasn't going to settle for just one. So it was very good that I knew that. I think a lot of women today don't know that. They're really confused, like, do I want career, do I want family, do I want both?
mm,
And that makes them just very tentative in how they're operating.
mm,
So, you know I knew I was going to have to make it work no matter what. And at the beginning, oh my goodness, what it was so hard because we couldn't afford good childcare. We had the worst childcare ever. Like, we couldn't even trust our kids with these people. They were so awful. And we had some really awful instances where, thank goodness, the kids were okay, but they were not doing great things. Um, and we somehow, made it through that, to the point where finally I realized that if I'm going to work as much as I work, I'm going to need to invest in good childcare.
yeah.
And, Doug was really in that camp. Doug believes you get what you pay for. And I tend to be a bit frugal. But at some point, we were like, enough of this. Like, I can't work. I can't do anything if I don't think my kids are safe when I'm not home. So it took a while. We had to start, becoming financially viable. But at some point, when we could afford it, we said we are going to invest in the best and get people who live with us 24/7, are always there. When I travel, I know they're there. And that was a game changer. Like, we built a small village around us to support us. And that allowed me to breathe when I worked. It allowed me to be able to focus on work. It allowed me to know that my kids were loved as much as I loved them when I wasn't there. And it was a much healthier balance.
Mm. How do you think, for those kids growing up, watching their parents um, run their own business, but have the courage to be entrepreneurs, have the courage to go out there and back themselves and work really, really hard and be so dedicated to something, but specifically their mum, because like you said, at the time it wasn't normal for the mum to be out there running a global company, etc. How do you think that experience growing up for them flavored them into the adults that they are today?
It's a great question. And I think, like everything, there are positives and negatives, right? I think the negative at the time was I wasn't around as much as other mothers. I wasn't the room mom. There's this thing in the US called Art Smart, where it's like these art projects and they're art smart moms. And, I couldn't be there for that. I would go if they had an event. I would definitely be there. But I wasn't able to do a lot of those things. And they'd sometimes say, like, why are you not in the classroom? And I think, one of the things I also realized early on was, if I show guilt, right? If I feel such guilt and I show it to them, what role model is that going to be for them? And what is that going to mean for them when they get older? So I realized pretty early, thank goodness, that I want them. If I think about what I want, especially for my daughters, I have 4 daughters and 2 sons. So what I want for my daughters, I want them to have something they love as much or more than their kids, right? I want them to find this thing that makes their heart sing, and find this beautiful transcendent mission to put their heart and soul into, equally as they will their family. So I started to become kind of, even though I didn't feel it, I was super ashamed, like guilty. I would say, listen, I want you to understand what I'm doing when I'm not with you. So you know how important it is, not only to me, but to the world. And I talked to them about, because our business was very easy to understand. We were fortunate, right? You know, although you're my children, guess what? I have millions of other children that use these toys, and I'd show them letters, and I'd, test all the toys with them. And we started to bring them to work and to really show them. And I would say, if they said, it's not fair, I would say, I know, sweetie. And I feel, I know exactly how you feel. I wish I could be with you more, but I also know that one day you're going to find something that you love as much as I love making toys, that is going to make you really happy too. And that's my goal. And I want to show you, by my doing it, hopefully that'll show you that you can find that thing too. So I would say, now the jury, came back in, because my youngest daughter's 19. And they're all, our first daughter works for Lifelines and worked for Melissa and Doug. Our second daughter she's a working woman and will always be a working woman. Our third daughter's an entrepreneur, has her own business. Our son, our number one, is an entrepreneur. Um, and our youngest daughter is so entrepreneurial also. So I think, and they all talk about, the childcare they're going to have, and they want someone like one of our babysitters. So I think, for as much as I've certainly messed them up as well, they all believe they can do both, and they're all on the path to wanting to be independent and have their own thing too.
Yes.
So I think it did work.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's interesting, I mean, there's obviously no right and wrong. Go do it however you do it, folks. And what I've noticed coaching people is that when we identify with the vehicles, and so for example, the parent role, and for dads as well, but more often than not, it's the mum that identifies as mum. I'm mum, and that's the full-time thing. When the kids grow up and move out and get married and start their own families, quite often there's an identity crisis. It's like, oh, who am I? What do I care about? What am I into? What am I passionate about? What are my hobbies? I don't know. I've lost myself, because she identified as the kid's mum, and working on the school council and being in the room doing the art and craft and and that becomes the whole sense of identity. And so to have a sense of purpose or meaning or reason, why am I here? Me first. Why am I here? That transcends any of those temporary chapters, I think is really healthy. So it's lovely to see that your kids have, been flavored in that way
Yeah,
into.
I think at the end of the day, again, it had some obvious negatives, but I do think at the end of the day, it did serve its purpose in showing them that they can do it too.
Well, you had to be you. I mean, one of the most important parts of it is that, you were being authentic. You were being who you are, and 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 it sounds like you didn't feel like you had much of a choice. It was like, no, 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 I need to I need to create,
I
and I
didn't,
need to
and I
get
think
this stuff out.
yeah, I think I knew I'd put too much pressure on them if they became my meaning, that the pressure on them would be too great, because I need them to be my meaning, which I also knew it would be very unhealthy, which is why
Yeah.
I think, to save them, I knew
Yeah.
I better have something else to put all
Yeah.
my energy into.
And it sounds like you would have gone crazy too. I mean, with all of this,
Yeah, I would have.
creativity and the way you described your internal world and just this compulsion to get these ideas out and get
Yeah,
them into reality.
unfortunately.
Right. I've got another question for you.
Sure.
You know those sliding door moments, those little moments of synchronicity, we could call them coincidence, which literally they are a coincidence, but it's a perchance meeting of a person that opened up a whole other thing, or if you hadn't got that red light, then you might not have bumped into that. But it was like one of those moments where it's synchronistic and something happens that opens up a whole other kind of pathway in front of you. Are any of those coming to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one, to be honest, is the end of Melissa and Doug. I think Doug and I never really planned on leaving Melissa and Doug. We were intent on being carted out of there, when we couldn't breathe anymore. That was always our vision. But, some decisions we made sort of led to this ultimate sale, and it was very painful and not at all what we wanted, and really about 180 degrees from the ending we had wanted. But now, whatever it is, 4 years sort of after the beginning of the trauma started, almost 5 years now, um I would say it's probably the best thing that ever happened,
Ah,
because it allowed us to rise from the ashes like, phoenixes, and start something new. And I think, I, for one, was really terrified. Uh, although I call myself a white space creative, I knew one mode. I knew how to make toys. Not that I ever did when I started, but I had become sort of that was my thing. And I did it like it was like breathing. I did it in my sleep. And the thought of not making toys anymore, and even channeling it just slightly to the left and putting it into well-being products for adults, was in a way terrifying. Like, can I do this? Right? Can I excuse me, can I use this same creativity and create an entirely new category? So I think that process of starting something from complete nothing um, was exhilarating and terrifying, and really, I would say, proved something really powerful to me,
yeah,
that, I did live to create another day.
yeah, yeah. How do you how are you with regret? How do you look at regret? Do you have regrets or do you not have regrets and everything was a lesson, and if that hadn't happened, you wouldn't have learnt this? Or do you look back, is there anything that you would change if you had a magic wand?
It's an amazing another amazing question. Um, I try not to live with regret at all anymore. And, I'm a student of meaning. Part of my coming out of my existential nihilism was I became a disciple of logotherapy, which is healing through meaning. And I became a logotherapy coach. I studied with a professor, and I really got deep into how do we create meaning and lead meaningful lives. And one of the core tenets of meaning, actually the one that's considered the highest level of meaning for humans, is to believe there is unconditional meaning in everyone and everything that happens, and to have to find it.
Mm.
And the meaning is especially in unalterable circumstances. Meaning, if you can find meaning in the things that were out of your control and horrific, and still find meaning, that you have reached the highest level of meaning.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Basically, when you can't change a situation, you change yourself, which is a Viktor Frankl very powerful quote.
yeah.
So I think as I became, if you would have asked me 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I would have been very much like grumbling about what happened and so upset and stuck in the past, probably. But once I started to live these principles and realize, if I want to coach people in logotherapy, I have to, the first stipulation is you have to believe there's unconditional meaning in every single thing.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't believe that my whole life.
Right.
I believed life was meaningless.
Yep.
So if I was going to change my mindset, then I had to live it.
Yeah.
So I think I've really taken that to heart. And I think this idea of, instead of why is this happening to me, how is this happening for me?
Yeah.
And taking everything and trying to see it in its positive light. So it's a game changer. And I would say, coming out of the Melissa and Doug horrific debacle, I needed to do that a lot, because everything that I had built was ripped out of me. And it was really like stuck in the ashes. So I had to use my logotherapy, many, many times each day, and say, how can I find the meaning in this? And how can I, transform it into something light again?
What meaning have you found from having the company that was your blood, sweat, and tears for more than 30 years, and all of your passion and joy and the hardship and everything that you put into that, the two of you, to have that, as you've described it, torn out of you and torn away from you in a fashion that sounds like it was anything but, you know, civil or nice or healthy, or it sounds like it was a horrible way for it to finish for you. What have you made that mean now? With the benefit of hindsight, what does it mean to you now?
I think, like everything, it's about not clinging, and realizing that for 32 years that we were literally there, we created something beautiful. We created, people got married who worked there. I mean, we did it in an extraordinarily different way. And we created toys for over a generation of kids to spark them with the power of open-ended play, and to leave it at that, and to say, now, you know, we are not there anymore. But when we were ripped out, our soul was stayed with us, right? The soul was ripped out of Melissa and Doug, the company, but the soul was very much in Melissa and Doug, the people.
Yeah.
So now we are doing the exact same thing at Lifelines, and bringing all that, beauty and the joy of an authentic mission into everything we're doing at Lifelines. And I would say, for whatever reason, our product at Lifelines is resonating even more than our toys, like on a very visceral level. Um, and we're getting these letters, like maybe 100 a week, that are some of the most powerful letters I've ever gotten. And I read every letter at Melissa and Doug because I cared so much about making meaning. So I would say I feel really grateful that we didn't get stuck in the negativity. And again, one of the reasons Doug agreed to start Lifelines with me was because I was in such a dark place. And he knew that and my creating days weren't over, and I was not ready to be done creating. So I think he cares so much about me and my mental health and my well-being, that I think he was like, whatever you want, Melissa, like, if you still need to create, then so be it, continue to create. So I feel so, in a way, it's vindicated. Not that I needed to, but I guess we all have a little chip on our shoulders. But, vindicated, freed, um, like, empowered, that I proved, mostly to myself, that I could. Like, one day I said to myself, I was having a real panic attack. Like, what did we do? And now we have a team. And are we going to be able to do this again? Like, how many people do this twice? Like, no one. No one does it once, much less twice. Like, did I just do the stupidest thing ever? And
Mm.
is it going to take our entire, life savings and just poof? Because we're funding this whole thing. And, I said, after the panic attack, I said, okay, well, you do fancy yourself like a white space creative, which means you create out of out of sort of beginner's mind, out of nothingness.
Yep.
If you are truly the white space creative you say you are, then shut that blank up
Yep.
and start creating. And, don't think, go back to that beautiful, pure flow state of creativity
Yep.
and create what you're seeing, create what you think people need that they're not getting, and make some blanket good products. And, let's get this party started.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done.
Yeah. So from the outside,
Mhm.
it seems like the meaning to why did the separation of Melissa and Doug the people from Melissa and Doug the company have to be the way it was? Why couldn't it have been much more smooth and ease and flow? Why did it have to be the way you've described it? Was that in that tearing apart, the meaning was that you have been given the opportunity to remember that you and Doug are you and Doug, the people, the souls, the the people before and after the creation of a company, right? And a company's a
Ex
company,
I love that.
and even
That's
though you went
beautiful.
the whole 9 yards and called it your own names, like, I mean, I coach leaders around how to separate and individuate from their company because, like you've used the analogy as well, birthing a company is like birthing a baby. You have the initial conception of the idea, and then there's the gestation period, and then you birth the thing, and then it's completely reliant on you. Like it needs to breastfeed, and it needs your hands on, and it needs everything. And then gradually it grows up, and you try and help it become independent, and then it's independent, but you still feel like it's yours, and so you're still identified with it. And when someone does something bad to
Exactly.
your company, you take it personally because this is my
Yep,
baby. And but you have
yep.
to get to the point where it's like you need to let that company go and be independent. And then right at the very end, you guys, the final separation for you was, as we've spoken about. And now
But
you've got
it's funny, now there's sort of a full circle because in a couple weeks, we're being inducted into the Toy Industry Hall of Fame,
right.
um, for, Melissa and Doug. So
Yep.
that will sort of be, in a way, I think at the beginning I was very sort of like negative about it. Like I'm not going to go. I don't even, how silly. It's just one of those, you know, things that don't matter. But as I started to think about it, I thought, you know what? Like that is the perfect bow on a
Yeah.
35-year journey that has in truth been extraordinary.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't we be on the wall with all these people we
Yeah.
admire so much and say, you know what, that was that chapter. And
Yeah.
maybe that, for me especially, will be sort of the, you know
Yep. Yes.
done that,
The
move
symbolic bow, like you said, the bow on the end of it.
the bow
And
on the gift, and it's a
I'm
gift.
glad you're going to go. Congratulations, by the way. And I'm glad that you're going to go because it's also it is it's not just for you, it's for other people who want to commend you and celebrate you and the achievements. So that's lovely. And now I'm also wondering what it would be like if you went back to, so before you and Doug had even had the idea. When did you and Doug first meet? How old were you when you met?
I was 19,
Okay, so if you went back to
20,
18-year-old
21.
you, 18-year-old Melissa, um, and from what you've said, 18-year-old Melissa had a pretty tough childhood in terms of your internal world and feeling like it was black and dark and everything. But before you'd even met Doug, if we could go back to her and say, hey, a couple of things. One, you're going to meet this guy and fall in love. You're going to build a company together. You're going to have 6 kids. And one day you're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame for toys, like globally recognized as contributors on a global scale to toys for kids. To this 18-year-old, would she have just fallen backwards off her chair? How would she have
Of
taken that?
course she would have. Oh my gosh, it it would have never been what I imagined. I never was a dreamer in that way, to be honest. Life was so hard for me that I never believed in fairy tales. I always thought, probably very conducive to entrepreneurship, to be honest. I always thought life was so hard.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'd always say to myself, why does life have to be so hard?
Yeah.
So I think I would have said, uh, not in any sense was it going to be what you just said, but I'll do something where I have to work really hard and I can make something. I hope I can find that thing. I'm
Yeah.
just not sure what it is yet.
Yeah. One foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's no such thing as the complete fairy tale. And that's part of the point of this whole podcast, actually, really, Melissa, is to look at the unknown path and to look at what from the outside people might go, oh, fairy tale, you fell in love, you started a company, you had 6 kids, and you made the global da 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 la. And but hearing your story is like, no, this has been hard work, and you've used the word hard a lot when you were talking about your childhood and also talking about the journey through being an entrepreneur and building a company that it ain't easy. You got to put the yards in. Is that something that still resonates as a truth for you?
Well, actually it's the core of meaning. So, believe it or not, in meaning there's the ultimate horizon, which
Yep.
becomes your North Star, right? That's your vision statement like, "Oh, I want to save the world. I want to eradicate poverty." That's out there. But actually, that's not the meaning. That's just your sort of your beacon, right?
Yep.
Your meaning is the striving. And I always come back to this amazing story that Albert Camus wrote about Sisyphus.
Yep.
Sisyphus was a Greek god who cheated death twice and got punished.
Yep.
And his punishment was that he had to push this boulder up a hill for eternity. All day, he pushed the boulder up the hill. And at the end of the day, as the day was ending, it finally reached the top of the hill. And he would say, "Ah," and he would take a breath, and then it would roll right back down to the bottom of the hill. And a line in his book is so powerful in Camus' book where he talks about this. He says, at one point, he says, "I have to believe that by the end, Camus was happy." Meaning that he did end up finding some modicum of joy in the act of pushing the boulder up the hill each day. And I think about meaning and life as the same way, right? Like all of us, especially young people today, they have this arrival fallacy. They're rushing toward the top of the hill,
Yeah.
and they believe that once they get to the top of the hill, the meaning will be up there
Yeah.
and they'll find the meaning. But actually, that's a rival fallacy. And what
Yeah.
happens is they end up getting there and saying, "Oh my gosh, like I thought it was going to be so much better. I'm still empty." The
Yeah.
meaning is in the struggle, in the striving, in the journey.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I realize now. And the fact that they're challenges is just part of that journey and part of that struggle. And if you can, as you said, accept that they're inevitable, and we will use all our resources and all our experience to the best of our abilities to surmount those obstacles and solve them and make sure they don't happen, then you can have some level of happiness, contentment, fulfillment that you are right in it, like still in the game, still striving. And that's where I think I am. I'm not believing that it's supposed to be some fairy tale and I'm going to end up at this place and suddenly, it'll be magical. But I am enjoying that I'm still in the game and still striving and still having those wins every day where I can say, "Wow, I came through that fire,
Yeah.
and I'm a little singed, but I'm feeling good."
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's only young kids that have this arrival fallacy, this get to the end thing. I think I shared with you when we first met, Talia and I run these beautiful retreats in the Himalayan mountains in North India, and we walk. Um, Very, very remote. We have pack horses and guides, and it's not for the faint-hearted. It's very adventurous, and we go on these beautiful long remote walks. And the Western clients at the start of every day, where are we getting to? What peak are we going to scale? What mountaintop are we getting to? And we say, no, we're just walking. And really, they don't get it. And then on day 5 of these 7 days of walking, I say 2 things in the morning. First thing I say to everybody is, today we walk in silence. So, not a word spoken all day. And we walk slowly. And the people don't know how slowly I mean. We walk so slowly that if you flew over us in a helicopter, you'd think we were standing still. That's how slowly we walk. And in the first hour, I can see all of these Western brains are about to explode. I can almost hear their thoughts. "Well, I can't do that. We're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to make it anywhere. We're not going to get to the top. We're not going to. We need to get to the finish line." And it's almost like they're going crazy. And then one by one, usually within the first hour of the day, one by one, these Western brains just kind of pop, and they go into the beautiful meditative state where they embody the learning of what you just described, which is it's in this moment, taking this step, pushing this boulder up this hill. This is the moment. This is where it is. This is where any fulfillment that is available to me, any sense of meaning or joy of life itself is only in this moment. It's not over there. So let me just gently keep pushing this boulder slowly up this hill, you know.
It's exactly it. That's why I love that metaphor and I think about it all the time. I think it's really very appropriate to life
Yeah.
and realizing that, it's the and some say it as it's the verb, right? It's the not the noun.
Yeah.
So it's the doing, the engaging, the fighting, the creating, and if you can live in the verb where you're in it and you're doing what you are thinking you want to achieve, you're in the doing, you're going to be okay. And that's part of the whole Melissa and Doug journey too. I realized that I love creating. And it doesn't really matter whether it's at Melissa and Doug or whether it's at Lifelines or whether it's on my own, right? If I'm creating whatever it is, and it could be a framework, it could be a dinner, it could be a class. I love creating all kinds of things. It doesn't even matter the mode, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it could be a book. Um, if I'm creating and I'm able to share that content with others and hopefully impact them in some way, then I'm at peace. So it doesn't matter that this framework of a big company isn't around me. It sort of it stripped me, that exodus like stripped me of so much. And I thought I wasn't egoic. And I realized, wow, I actually am so egoic. And Melissa and Doug was like tied into my soul because I started it at 22
Mm,
and it was like I grew up with it. It became my identity.
mm,
So I was actually like lost my identity. And it was so incredible to have to, rebuild yourself from identifying with something so deeply that I didn't even think I identified with it. Like
mm.
I didn't, I was like, oh, that's fine. It's not a big deal. And then it was like, wait a second, this is everything I am and who I am.
Yeah.
Um, so to have to start from nothing and build yourself back from that was, but was a challenge.
I'm glad I met you after you'd been ripped apart from that old identity of Melissa and Doug, and because it's like you were just saying then, that kind of had to happen for you to learn everything that you've learned in the last 4 or 5 years around who you are separate from what you built, and that you are a creative, and it sounds like the one of the biggest meanings of your life is to create.
It is. And that's the thing, and I can't be, I mean, yes, I can't really do anything else well. So if I
Really?
continue
You can't
to
do
do
anything else well?
I mean, that's my thing, right? So as long as I'm in that space where I'm able to brainstorm and create and come up with ideas and help others bird their ideas,
Yeah.
that's the other thing that's just as sacred is helping others give rise to their own ideas that are trapped in them.
Yeah.
So I think as long as I'm in that space, like I'm as good as I ever was, in my company.
Yeah.
So it's a good lesson, right? We
Yeah.
are more than this structure we build around us that's
Yeah.
purely egoic.
100%. Hey, if I could chat with, one of your closest friends, a very dear friend to you, and I asked that friend to describe Melissa to me, what would make you really happy to hear them say? If they were describing your character, what words would make you feel, oh, I'm glad you see me like that?
I think what the words I would love are, truly authentic, wholly authentic, no airs, honest, uh, a giver, more than a taker, maybe inspiring, um, the wind in my sails, uh, a really good friend.
Mm, yeah, beautiful.
That's a
And
good
so,
question.
and so you are. There you are. Just like
Aw.
that. I love that those core values of yours are just right there. So, Melissa, is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you think is important, or that you want to talk to? Any bits of the story that yeah, that we haven't spoken about?
I mean, that that was amazing, honestly. I think that was a really good conversation. And I would say, you know, the only other thing is to keep remembering, like you said, there will be problems, but also for some reason we're under this misperception that life is supposed to be easy. It's the same thing as there won't be problems. But I think if you can understand that life actually isn't supposed to be easy. And I work with a very wise existential psychotherapist who's my heroine. And she always says, Melissa, life is hard. She's Danish. Um, and she says it right away. Life is hard. Like, don't go be under any illusion it's supposed to be easy. So if you start from that and realize that it's going to be all things, it's going to be happy and sad and joyful and bitter and sweet and, sour. I think every day becomes a little easier.
Yes. Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I was just about to suggest the irony is that um, the hard life gets a little bit easier when we allow and accept it to be hard where it's hard, right? And then it gets a little bit easier. I love that. That's a beautiful note to wind up our conversation on, Melissa. Thank you so much for
Oh my
hanging
gosh,
out
you're
with
so
me.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for all you're doing. It's a beautiful sentiment to want to share the path of people who you think are successful, without really doing anything, and then you realize, wow, they've really had to struggle to get there.
Yeah. And you're still pushing the boulder up the hill, and still being you and creating, and Doug's still there with you, doing the executive heavy lifting to for
Oh yeah.
Lifelines now. And this is the boulder up the hill where we made it. We've arrived. This is it. And it continues to be every day. So I'm very grateful that our paths crossed and we've been introduced, and we're now friends, and I get to learn from the stories of your life as well. And thank you again for coming on the unknown path to share those stories with our listeners.
Well, thank you for sharing the story. And if anybody wants to talk with me, they can write me at melissa@lifelines.com. I'm always open to hearing people's stories and sharing anything I can and supporting them however I can.
Oh, that's a really beautiful offer. Thank you so much for that. All right, folks. Well, you've made it all the way to the end of an episode, which I'm sure was easy to do because the stories were certainly compelling. And if you're anything like me, I'm fascinated in true, authentic human stories and how people get where they get, and what they go through to get there. So thanks for joining us. If you're enjoying listening to these, please let a friend know that this podcast exists, and we'll see if we can get more people listening to it. All right, bye for now. See you, Melissa.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.